Hey, my friends, welcome back to the Money D&A show, where Andy and I, Dale, we get to talk to you, talk with each other, I guess, but talking to anybody else who's listening here on all things that we want to talk about money. I really appreciate having you listening to us and sending us any feedback that you might
Mm.
have, good or bad. Don't be too hard on us, please. We're frail souls. But if there's anything that you love about what you've heard so far, then please hit a like and subscribe and all that other fun stuff that whatever might show up. More importantly, though, then please do send us a message, a comment if there's anything that you want to hear
Mhm.
specifically us talking about or touching on, or if you have questions, then please feel free to hit us up. We are here talking about all things related to money. And I just want to reiterate that we're doing this not because we just like talking about money or anything like this, but we really believe that the more conversations that we can inspire about money, the more confidently and freely that we are speaking about our finances, then we are better able to control and better able to control the outcomes for our finances in our lives, and more importantly, in your life. It's my
Right.
firm belief that we cannot tame what we cannot name, but once we start having conversations about these things,
Mhm.
then it equips us and empowers us to really start having more clarity and seeing what's possible for us and what can change, what we can change in our financial lives, in our futures.
Yep. Well said.
We're
Well said. And
Yeah.
it's kind of fun. I just wanted to hop in here because if it seems like Dale and I are just kind of, are already at level 10 coming into this podcast, it's because we had a good hour and a half chat about all things life kind of leading into this. So we are primed and ready to go, and it's going to be an absolute blast as we're talking about stuff today. But yeah, just we were talking about before we hit the record button that we are early enough on, right? This is just episode 3 that it bears repeating of as to why we're doing this. And Dale hit it right on the head. We are wanting to just share our knowledge, share our wisdom for whatever that's worth, and hopefully maybe avoid a stressful conversation with you and your spouse or something to that effect with maybe having maybe a different point of view or some broadening aspects of money and different things like that. So happy to be here with you again, Dale. Always have a good time chatting with you, my friend.
Likewise, Andy. It's always a blast. We were riffing a little bit, talking about budgeting last time,
Hmm.
and you know you and I are both fans of the YNAB, but I was actually doing a little bit more research and realizing that not just YNAB, but a lot of budgeting approaches
Mhm.
all start with this first idea of putting every dollar to use or giving
Right.
every dollar a job, right? I think somebody had a bit of an analogy with George Washington where they said, they had very limited resources, but they made sure that there were not any soldiers sitting idle or
Hmm.
any pieces of technology or something sitting idle. They were trying to maximize every single bit of resources that they had in
Right.
order to win the war.
Right.
Not that I think that money is a battle necessarily. I don't want to push that sort of analogy, but I think certainly, I think there was more to talk about, given the fact that lots of other budgeting approaches also use the same thing, same idea, the same concept, but making sure that all the money that you have is being put to use,
Hmm.
right?
Right.
Um, I think there was also sort of a corollary to that, sort of a side related concept would be that all the money that your income and your expenses are always equal. That if you subtracted your
Mm.
income minus your expenses,
Right.
that the ideal sum is zero, so that
Right.
that every dollar that's coming in is being put to use
Right.
somewhere, right?
Right.
So just riffing off and expanding this a little bit, I thought that maybe we should, we Andy, you and I, we wanted to ask a few more questions and talk
Hmm.
about this
Right.
concept a little bit more.
Right.
The first question really is, who is your money working for? If you're giving every dollar a job, if you're putting it all to use, then maybe a better question is, who is your money working for? Tell me about
Right.
this, Andy. Why do you think this is a good place to start?
I think it's a great place to start just because, again, it kind of follows the same model, which we focused on YNAB, but to Dale's point, this is a pretty standard operating and good practices, better to say, of other budgeting apps is to basically provide a job for every single dollar that you have. So to Dale's point, that when you look at the end of your budget, every dollar is accounted for. So you basically entered zero. So back to the question here of who is your money working for? This, I will be honest, this is somewhat of a new concept to me. Of my eyes have been kind of open to the fact that every dollar, which we won't get too far down in the road of when we look at our bank account and it says $5,000, do we really think that there's actually 5,000 literal dollars sitting in a bank right there? That's a question for another day. But anyways, but the idea is that when it's
Hmm.
just sitting there, um, what's it really doing? And I've got some videos and some new knowledge that I've come into just recently of when you put your, again, we'll just stay with the $5,000 into a savings account, quote unquote. Is it really just sitting there waiting for us to pull it out? I think that's kind of my maybe uneducated idea, is that, when I put money into a bank, it's just sitting there waiting for me to pull it back out. What I have come to know, and maybe Dale's known this for a long time, is that's really not how it works, right? The second that you put your money into a bank, for instance, we could use the same idea with a credit card. They are then, because they're smart with their money, they are then turning that money back around and loaning it to. So I'm putting my money in, they're going to loan that back out to Dale, and they may give me 1%. I'm being very, very generous. Most banks give us like 0.5% on their savings account. I'm going to loan that money back out to Dale and charge him 5, maybe 10% on his loan. So the money is not just sitting there idly waiting for me to pull it back out. It's actually working and making the bank money, which, so when I come back and say, hey, I want my $5,000, like, that's fine. But in the meantime, I've gained another $500, $1,000 by using that money. It makes me actually think of the parable of the talents, right? When you use those talents and actually grow that, that's the appropriate and the wise use of money. So who is your money working for? It really depends on, are you actively putting it to work for yourself, which we'll talk about in a little bit, or are we just kind of letting it sit there idly and do its own thing? So those are my thoughts. Dale, what do you think? What do you think about this one?
I
Exactly.
think, you were hitting on something right on. Um, if we are not really mindful about who this money is serving, or who this money is working for,
Right.
then by default you are making somebody else, that money is
Right.
working hard for somebody else, right?
Exactly.
So we have to be really mindful about this decision, and make a decision, be aware of what's happening, how the system works, how the money system works, how our money is working for other people, and how we can more effectively, if it's possible, make the money work for us, right? Or for the people that we love. Not that there's and not that everybody working for the bank is evil and we don't love any of them or anything like that. There could be fantastic people working for the bank, and I'd love to be able to make the bank shareholders rich and all that. But I really do want to, as the proverbial, the saying goes, we want to pay ourselves first, right?
Right.
We want to be able to make sure that we have our needs met, that we are blessing, our families, our children, whether it's giving charitably, if you give to church, or you want to give money to your extended family. It could be saving money for your future self as well. Like if you're putting aside funds and investing or saving money toward your future, then that's investing your future self, and
Right.
that's at the end of the day, it's still working hard for yourself, right? But if we're not making any decisions, if we're not really, being clear about this, and if we're just haphazardly going through, as most of us do, just trying to cover our butts and just pay the bills on time, then by default of making no real decision, then you're making our money work hard for other
Mhm.
people, right?
Right.
Um,
And
yeah.
I,
So
I
I,
I don't want to I don't
yeah.
want to get sidetracked on this because I think we could probably spend a whole episode just talking about savings, but let's just kind of talk about that because I think that is a misnomer that a lot of, I know you're in Canada, I'm in United States, so just a lot of North Americans have been taught, trained, indoctrinated, whatever you want to say it, is that if you are being smart with your money, you are saving it. And for some people, they're thinking, well, If it's in a quote unquote savings account, then therefore I'm doing what I've been told. So now I'm being smart with my money. Is it better than sitting in a checking account? A little bit, but not much, right? So the idea of like, so what are your thoughts on savings? Like, is that, when we're saying like, is our money working for us? If I just put it in a regular savings account, Dale, am I being smart with my money? Is it working for me then at that point?
Yeah, I mean the short answer is yes, but or yes, yeah, I shouldn't say yes, but yes, and
There you go.
there are even better ways that we can do it, right?
Correct.
I think you have to look at it. I don't think it's really just as cut and dry as if it's going to savings, then that's the way to go, or not savings. But having a sort of a larger, broader picture
Mhm.
and seeing a slightly more multifaceted road of options available.
Right.
Sometimes you'll be saving more by giving less in taxes and really reducing your
Mhm.
tax
Right.
considerations. And that's taxes. I mean, if you want to look at taxes, you should be thinking about taxes not just this year or when you're doing things on transaction or purchases, but sometimes it could be saving on taxes in for the following year or in 10 years time or upon retirement. So really thinking broadly and holistically about your tax implications. A lot of people will say it's not about how much money you're making, but it's about how much money you're keeping at the end of the day. So
Mhm.
really being mindful about your expenses as well. And
Right.
sometimes uh, attacking savings or being better about who your money is working for means that you are not necessarily spending the money
Mhm.
or your expenses. You're going to be reevaluating your expenses because that's the best way that you can
Right.
possibly be paying yourself first.
Right.
I think you're right, Andy. I think this is maybe something we can dive into a little bit
Hmm.
deeper on another episode. But I
Right.
think it is a really important question
Hmm.
to be asking yourself, you know, broadly, when your money is working for you, then what is the best strategy, right? Sometimes reducing debt is
Hmm.
the better strategy in the long term. Sure, it may mean that initially I'm not necessarily saving as much as I can in the first year or the first 3 months or something of my overall plan.
Right.
But if it means I'm reducing my debt load, then ultimately I'm paying more money to myself and less to
Mhm.
a third party or to Mr. Credit Card Company.
Right.
Um, then sure, you're not necessarily investing it or saving it right away, but in the
Right.
long run, that's going to be a better strategy.
Exactly right. Which I won't get too far off track on my I don't know, I'll call it a sales pitch, but what I'm passionate about of helping people reduce debt and build wealth, which I know Dale is with me on that. Of we are passionate about helping people. There's a variety of different ways to do that, which is part of the reason that we're doing this podcast, but not the only one. But I completely agree. Sometimes what may not make sense in our own mind math wise is the fastest way and the most efficient way to help us end up saving and like you said, end up keeping more money in the end.
Yeah, yeah. You wrote down reducing debt here, Andy. I think we should come up with like sort of a master equation so that it becomes clearer for
Hmm.
people. Maybe we can do this, work toward this another line, but there isn't just like money coming in and then I think some people have heard like a 50-30-20 rule or something. Like if you're budgeting, then make
Sure.
sure that 50% is going to your basic
Yep.
needs and 30% are going
Hmm.
to your savings and 20% are
Right.
going to whatever you want it to
Right.
go to or something. And as great of a starting point as that is,
Hmm.
um, I I would hesitate to say that that is the formula
Hmm.
for all the situations. I think we should maybe come up with something that's a little bit more rigorous as far as all the different parts that could be
Hmm.
and help to paint. I think it could help to portray a clearer plan as far as like
Right.
overall, you could be investing your money and saving this much, but if your debts are just going to be eroding away on all those
Right.
savings, then that's not going to be a great strategy. So you need to
Right.
have something that includes investments, includes your insurance,
Hmm.
includes your debt reduction, includes an
Right.
emergency fund,
Right.
includes building for retirement, and includes your tax obligations as well.
Mhm.
That's not going to be a simple equation, but we can come
Right.
up with something. I'm sure we can figure something out.
I already cracked the code, which if you're interested in what that is, we should talk because the idea of like a financial GPS, because to your point, it is ridiculously complex. And can you do the math? You could, but I think you probably have other things that you need to do. So trying to factor in all of those different things and which debt to tackle first and the snowball and then this and that kind of stuff. And then in the middle of all of your best laid plans, something is going to come in and get you off track for that. A financial GPS would be a wonderful thing, and I have just the thing. So if you're interested in that, we can have a conversation. Again, not what the podcast is about, but to your point, Dale, it is very, very complex, and it's not something that you can just sit down with a calculator and figure out because there's a lot more going on to that. But back to this, what would you think of? And I wanted to make sure that we get all of our good questions in here. You mentioned something about the banks, and we can kind of lump those in together with banks, credit card companies, different things like this. Um, so if this is new information to you, you might be thinking, well, and we actually kind of talked about that already about how banks are lending money out. I guess the secondary question to that is, are they do we need to vilify our banks, our credit cards necessarily a bad? Are they bad actors in this entire thing? We could kind of play a little bit, riff on that a little bit. So, Dale, if you can kind of tackle those two things, like how is it that they're talking are lending money, right? And then secondly, is it necessary? Do we need to vilify, or is it just shining a light on it and being understanding of how things work? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an excellent question. There are two questions that I'm really hearing. One is like, what are the banks and how do the banks really work and how are they making money? And more importantly, are they all evil? Are they the devil? And we had this
Mhm.
bit of a running joke
We
about
did.
about Waterboy and
Mhm.
everything. He's the devil. And I could just imagine, um, you know, uh, Adam Sandler's mom just sitting there saying the banks are the devil or something. I think they get a bit of a bad rap because we sort of paint these like broad strokes, black and white colored images of like corporate America, quote unquote,
Sure.
and the banks, quote unquote, or
Mhm.
Mr. Banker, and they're not interested in, they don't have your best interests in mind. Or another thing that I've heard sometimes is like, oh, society functions, the way everything is built is to keep us poor. And the only
Mhm.
way that they're going to
Right.
be rich is by
Right.
keeping us poor.
Right. Right.
I, Not that there isn't going to be some degree of possible truth or something, but I don't think that I don't believe that things are rigged against us or anything like this. I don't think sometimes it's good to have a clear enemy in mind, and I don't think the bank or the bankers or anybody that works for the bank is really the clear enemy. In fact, sometimes I think that vilifying something like that, and by vilifying we mean like making them into the villain, is really
Mhm.
distracting us from the real issue, which
Right.
is the villainous or vilifying these behaviors and these
Mhm.
beliefs in us, our
Mhm.
beliefs about money, our behaviors that are
Mhm.
not serving us in effective ways, that are not paying ourselves first,
Right.
that are inherently keeping our blinders on and not
Right.
really making clear and conscious choices. So I
Mhm.
think we should vilify things about money, yeah, but vilify the right things, not
Mhm.
necessarily the banker, Mr. Banker, but
Right.
we're going on. I'm gonna maybe break down how banks are making money, just expanding a little bit about
Mhm.
this. So
Yep.
hopefully we are neutering, the role that bankers and lenders have.
There you go.
Um, yeah, I don't know if that's the right word, neutering, neutralizing, just diminishing
There we go.
the
I like neuter.
negativeness. Neutering, yeah. Oh man,
Mm.
poor. I have anyway. I have images of like animals
Right.
being
Right.
neutered now. All of a sudden, that's not the image that we want to have going into a money conversation, but it is the image that we
But
have
here we
right
are.
now. Yeah. So how are the banks making money? Just like Andy explained, they're using the power of compound interest, and they are asking us for our money. They're essentially borrowing money from us. When we deposit money into a bank, then we are essentially lending them our money, and we do that in exchange for this hope of some kind of return, right? And um, that's just if we're, straight depositing. There are other investments or other things that we can be purchasing from the bank.
Right.
But ultimately, what we're doing is we're purchasing something, we're buying something with the belief that we're going to get some kind of a greater return in return, right? We're going to get some more money in the long run. And they are honest with their word. We
Mm-hmm.
oftentimes do get some money back, but what they're doing with our money once we lend it to them is
Right.
they're taking it, they're paying us, a half of a percent, a quarter of a percent,
Mm-hmm.
1%, 2%, 5% if you put it into a high interest account right now. But then they're taking that money and then they're lending it out at 10, 12%. The going rate for credit cards these days is anywhere between 20 to 30%.
Right.
That's an average rate. So they're
Yep.
lending out that money and then asking for even greater money. And the
Mm-hmm.
difference in that, the difference between the percentage points on the same $100 that we're depositing and then they're lending out, that's how they're making their money. That's
Right.
how that profit is being made, and it goes to the shareholders or to whoever else is
Right.
investing in the banks, or if it's a private bank, then it's
Right.
making them more money.
Right. Well, and I think you would, I'm not sure if it's the same in Canada. I know it here is here in the United States. Like, what are some of the nicest buildings in towns? There's a reason for that, right? They are
Sure.
very good at what they do. And back to your idea again, I kind of got out of order as far as the vilifying and then how did it all work. But you're right. I mean, they're not doing anything unlawful. I think maybe it's back to us and incumbent. And again, the purpose of this whole podcast is education is power, right? Knowing knowledge is power, and then putting that into action. That's what this is all about, right? I literally, and this is, I'm not just saying this for the case of the podcast. I've got really good friends that are that are bankers. They're wonderful people, right? The fact that they earn their money and they earn their living by working for a bank does not make them a bad person. Is the system set up to educate us on how they make money? Absolutely not, because then I think people would, it's kind of the whole the Wizard of Oz, right? When you peek behind the curtain and you see how this all works, it's like, oh my gosh. So, is that I think that's somewhat incumbent on us to kind of peel back the curtains and say, hey, this is how this works. There is a smarter way to do that. There's a whole movement of banking like a bank, right? I mean, if you can make yourself the bank where you're actually earning that money rather than giving that back to the credit card companies and lenders, then that's what we're going for, right?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's incumbent on us to ask questions about why this is working the way it's working,
Right.
and really the deeper question is, does it have to be that way? Does
Mhm.
just because it's always been a certain way, or just because we're told or not told, really, as the case might be,
Mhm.
how this is all working, then we just
Right.
have to believe, like, okay, well, that's just how it is. I'm just going to be
Right.
paying 25% interest on
Yeah.
everything that I do, and like buying everything by credit card and
Hmm.
then carrying over a balance because I'm going to collect more points. But
Right.
that's the best way to go. Is it really the
Right.
best way to go?
Yeah.
It's incumbent on us
Right.
to be able to ask of ourselves and of each
Mhm.
other, what is happening here?
Right.
How do I find out more information? And
Right.
more to the point here, how can we make sure that we pay ourselves first, that we
Mhm.
are maximizing how
Right.
much money we are directing to the people that we want to direct, or to the
Right.
to the things that we want to direct, right?
Exactly. So
Yeah.
our last question of the episode today, and we've kind of hinted and kind of flirted around with the idea is how can I make money work for me, right? We've talked about that. And again, understand this is episode 3 of hopefully hundreds that we're going to just be able to dive in at some point. I think Dale and I would like to have maybe other folks come in and kind of share their ideas on this. But anyways, there's just such a wide range of things that we can talk about. So this is going to be kind of a foretaste of broader things. But what would be your short answer to this question, Dale?
How can I make my money work for me? The short answer to this question is never stop asking this question.
There you go.
Yeah. Yeah, with every phase in your life, with every time you're looking at your budget, and you should do a budget.
The episode
That
two, right?
Yeah, right. I mean, we can do that every episode. I don't know. I think that should be like a mini course. Like, this is how you do a budget. Um, that's actually a really good idea. We should maybe do like a mini course.
That's good stuff.
But we should always be asking this question: how can I make my money work for me and not necessarily somebody else. Not that it's not great for money to work for other people, but being really conscious and intentional about who the money's working for, right? Give to Caesar what is Caesar's. There's
Hmm.
taxes that are owed,
Right.
and fine. They're the money lenders are making money in a certain way. We're borrowing money from them. We're lending money to them, and they're making money for it. That's fantastic and dandy. God bless them. It's a
Right.
great system, but we don't necessarily need to be giving them more money,
Right. Right.
um, that we don't have to. Like, I
Right.
mean, if we can somehow make more money for ourselves, we can give them the money that they need to make them happy, but we can also make sure that we are paying ourselves first and making the money work for us. So I think the first question is really don't 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 stop asking that question. Just constantly be asking, um, with all the changes and phases in your life, right? Uh,
Yeah. No, I completely agree.
yeah. What about you, Eddie? What do you?
Yeah, I mean, and again, there's no way that we can answer this question in the little bit of time that we have left here. But to your point, we have to always be learning, and I think that's why I've been so excited to start this podcast and just have. I mean, Dale and I have awesome conversations outside of money as well. But I know he's a super smart guy, and as we learn new things, and he's got um, this podcast or this author or whatever, we're just kind of bouncing ideas off of it. So it will never hurt you to learn new information. Some of that information you're going to kind of discard, and that's great as well. But lean in on this. And I guess one very tactical, practical thing that you could do just right out of the bat, that again is something that I'm a little bit ashamed that I didn't know about this ahead of time, is rather than just being satisfied with keeping your money in a typical savings account in your local bank, no offense to them, find a high yield savings account. That one little thing right there could make a massive difference. Okay, it's a difference between keeping your $1,000 or $5,000 in a savings account that's not even keeping up with inflation, which we'll talk about later, but at least putting it in a high yield savings account where you can get 3 to 5%. At least it's doing something at that point. So then we're maybe at least keeping up with an inflation and kind of gaining a little bit. But so that would be my one just small little thing that you could do right now. There's lots of different ones. HYSA, high yield savings account. Research some of those and try that. That would be a really easy, practical thing you could do right out of the bat.
Yeah. Um, I I can't help but think about some other related questions when it comes to money, and a book that I've read, Andy, and you and I have talked about this book, but really coming to the question before you get into like, how can I do this, or what can I do in order for this to happen? Asking the questions of who and why first,
Right.
right?
Yep.
And
Yep.
really anchoring the thoughts and the questions and the conversations, and ultimately conversations and concepts are fantastic, but they're really powerless until we start taking actions and making changes in our behavior. But we need to make sure that those concepts and those actions are all rooted in who and why first.
Mhm.
If you're not really sure of what to do, if you don't really know who to be talking to, if you want to be asking more questions, then don't ask the question of like, what does this person say, or what does that person
Mhm.
say, but really hone in on like who who
Mhm.
you are.
Right.
Who do I trust? What do I how who do I who do I believe in? What do I
Mhm.
believe?
Right.
And who do I want to bless? Who do I want to be? Who do
Right.
I want to become? Who do I want to be remembered as? And
Mhm.
then it gets into that sister questions, set of questions of like, why do I want to
Mhm.
be doing this?
Mhm.
Why do I want to be making more money? Do I want to be making more money? Sure, maybe I do. Well, then
Mhm.
why do we want to make more money?
Right.
Why is this important to you?
Mhm.
um and then you can start asking, really, I think once you have that, not
Mhm.
even super solidly clear, but even
Right.
fuzzy kind of clear, like a
Mhm.
little bit better of an idea of it, then you can get into better questions of like, okay, well, who can I trust to keep
Mhm.
talking about this? Hopefully
Right.
Andy and I will be one of your
Sure.
go-to people to
Exactly.
keep
Mhm.
conversation going for you in your head. But if it's not us, that's okay. We're not going to
Right.
float everybody's boat. And you
Mhm.
just make sure though that you find somebody that you can speak with,
Right.
that has your best interests in mind and that you can
Exactly.
candidly converse with and say, okay, well, what do I want to do and how can I make this happen?
Hmm.
Um, and I think from there, then you start getting into some of like you say, some of the little details that are going to be
Hmm.
different for every single
Sure.
person that
Yep.
listens to this, right? There's no one answer set or a
No.
solution set that's going to work for everybody in every situation.
Right.
But there will be sure general principles and guidelines that are helpful. But you need to be asking those specifics. Okay, so what am I going to do this month? What am I going to do now? What do I want to be doing? And how do I make this work? Is it better in this account or that account or that account? Do I need to be focusing on insurance or in
Hmm.
investments
Right.
first or an emergency fund? And we can break all that down a
Yep.
little bit later. Yeah.
Yep. I love it. I love it. Well,
Yeah.
Dale, I appreciate it, buddy. Our time always goes way too fast, but
Yeah. It's amazing.
it is. It is. But I hope that you guys got value out of our conversation today. I know that it's been fun for Dale to kind of just brainstorm different ideas that we can talk to you about. We hope that this is things that are valuable and needed for your particular situation. To Dale's point from the very beginning, if there are specific things that you have questions for, we would love to get to the point where we are just following up and kind of riffing on specific things that matter to you. So definitely reach out to us if there are things that we can help you on, and we will catch you next week. Thanks, Dale. Appreciate it, buddy.
Thanks, Andy. Love it.
All right. See you guys.
Take it easy.